Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to give everyone a couple of minutes to just log into the webinar. We're streaming on Facebook Live as well, so I just want to make sure that everyone settles in before we get started. If you're having any technical difficulties, please let me know in the chat, and I will be more than happy to help anyone out there. I'll be monitoring the webinar today, so it'll be best to reach out to me just so that we don't interrupt the presenters for today. So I see people logging into the event. We're going to start in a couple of minutes. I'm just letting everyone filter into the event and settle in. Okay, so I think I'm going to get started. So again, thank you everyone for joining our webinar today. My name is Sandra, and I'm going to help with monitoring the event. So like I said in the beginning, if you have any technical difficulties, please feel free to reach out to me in the chat, and I will be able to help you over there. If you have any questions during the webinar, we also are going to have a Q&A period at the end of the webinar. So if you have any questions, you can also post them into the chat, or you can also post them into the Q&A box that you can see at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And our presenters will do their best at the end to answer all of them. Today, our topic for today is best practices for recruiting in 2023. And today we have with us Eglys Perez. She is the Director of Recruiting at TorontoJobs.ca. And we also have Miranda Nolan. She is the Recruiting Assistant. So I hope everyone enjoys the webinar. Please feel free to jot down as many notes as you want and to jot down any of your questions in the chat so we can get to them at the end. I think that's it from my end. I will pass it over to Eglys and Miranda.
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you, Sandra, so much. I hope you can hear me and see me okay. Just wanted to first, thank everyone who is attending today, and then of course, hope that there's some value that you gain from our presentation today. And of course, as Sandra mentioned, please feel free to jot down some questions, as we're happy to do our best in answering them. So I'm Eglys Perez. I am the recruiter here, or director of recruiter here at TorontoJobs.ca. Sorry, I think I said that wrong. Director of recruiting. And I've been with Toronto Jobs now for about 5 years. I've been in the staffing industry for at least double that. And, just want to give back as much as possible to both clients and candidates alike when we're discussing different topics. And of course, today we're going to be discussing best practices for recruiting in 2023. As we all know that it's been a very challenging time for recruiting in different industries and different fields across the board. So hopefully you get some interesting insight here with us. So I'll pass it over to Miranda to introduce herself.
Yeah, thank you, Eglys, and thank you, Sandra. I'm Miranda Nolan. I am the recruitment assistant here at TorontoJobs.ca. I've been on the team for about 6 months, and looking forward to this webinar to discuss the best practices for recruiting in 2023.
Wonderful. So we'll go ahead and get started with our first slide. Sandra, if you don't mind just jumping over. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is employer branding. And though this isn't obviously directly related to sourcing resumes or candidates, we feel that it's become more important than ever in 2023. If you haven't already put some effort or thoughts about employer branding, definitely it is time to start now. And the reason for that alone is just that it is such a competitive market. Candidates are now really demanding more from their employers or potential employers, and they're really looking at, employer reputation and what that looks like on social media or, of course, online overall. So building a reputation, an employer brand is very, very essential to really getting or competing for great candidates out there. So what does that mean? It's, thinking about what makes your company attractive or stand out as an employer, right? What type of candidates, do you want to seek out, and how are you going to attract those specific type of candidates, right? Whether it be, more of if it's, techie, or, up and coming graduates, how are you going to appeal to that specific market? What's the image of your company culture? Like, what is the image that you're portraying? So again, social media is really a key factor, and a lot of this, a lot of companies are using to perhaps put out some videos or just kind of making sure that there's a big presence, and they're promoting certain positive image about their culture, their perks of working for you, promotions, things like that. So it's really important that you do put some thought and also put some time into portraying yourself and your culture, your company culture specifically online. And also, are your staff enjoying working for you? And if they are, then make sure you're marketing that, right? Like, it doesn't have to be something that is just polished off Canva or something like that. It could be your own employees. And I think that brings a lot more value. It could be your employees talking about their experience and why they enjoy working for you. If you can ask them, great. If not, you can do a survey. There's many ways to get that information as well, and then portray that how you feel is best suited. Also, make sure that your brand is something that you can deliver. So a lot of times when it comes to employer branding, people, they put a huge wish list and they want to portray a certain image, but make sure that it is, of course, something that you can deliver. When people are going into interviews, they want to see that match, right? They want to make sure that what they're seeing online and what their reputation is exactly the feel that they're getting in that interview or the onboarding that they're experiencing. So whether it be positive culture, whether it be flexibility, modernized workspace, any of that, just make sure that it's something that you are delivering or working to deliver. And, nowadays job seekers are doing tons of research. They can research the products and the services that you sell as a company, but they can't always really get access to your work environment. So if there's a way for you to put, perhaps some office tours, or just kind of give them a little bit more insight and access to your work environment, to the people that work, at your company, the different teams, the different team events, all that stuff really helps employees or candidate job seekers choose, who they're going to be applying to and why. All right. That's it for me. I'll pass it over to Miranda for the second point.
Okay, thanks, Eglys. So number 2, our second point here is selling your company and the role. So this starts with the job ad and will continue throughout the entire interviewing process and onboarding process. So it's important to express your company in the best light. And this can be shown by expressing your company story. So thinking about, what's the company story? Where did it start? How far has it come? And, where is it going? These are important things to just that can make a difference in your company when being presented to candidates and helping them make that choice to go with your company. Another thing is showing how your company is keeping up with the time. So as we've all known with COVID and everything, the transition to working from home and hybrid and all of these different work arrangements, it's important for your company to show that you're flexible, to show your employees that the company is there for you. And, it's all about the role that you have within, the company is important, and expressing that to the employees and the candidates. to show that your company is progressing and there's growth and, they're accommodating to what the employees need. That goes along with showing the growth within the company and having a transparent plan for that growth. Celebrating promotions on social media is another way to help candidates choose your company. They can see the celebrating on social media and just, what's going on within the company through whether LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever it is, because Eglys did mention that candidates will be researching the company before the interview, and that could help them, catch their eye or their interest when interviewing. And then another point would be to talk about mentorship programs, training programs, and great things that are happening and offered at the company. That goes along with, selling the role, selling the company. And then the last point here would be to introduce the candidates to the team early on. And this could really help them, make that decision, because when they can see themselves within the company with their fellow employees, that could be a real turning point. And, just showing the candidates around the company itself, like Eglys did mention, virtual tours or in-person tours, and just helping the candidate really see themselves at your company.
Yeah, and just adding to that point, Miranda, about introducing candidates, and these are in the interviewing stage, to perhaps team members, right? Not just the managers. I think that can go a long way because, of course, as we know, the typical process is that they would meet managers, and from the first interview to the last interview, and that's it. But really introducing job seekers and candidates to their potential team, especially if they're a good candidate, that can really appeal to them because it really does give them a lot more insight, maybe even just ability, the time to ask some questions that they normally wouldn't ask a manager. And I think that could really help sell the role and the company as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, great. So the other thing we wanted to discuss is, things that help you think outside the box. I know that this phrase is overused, but I think nowadays we really do have to pivot as much as possible. And the first thing I would say to that is, if you are really stuck still on looking for that perfect resume, and you're really, really trying to get that perfect 10 out of 10, candidate on paper, I would say stop. It's honestly, it's when we have a market such as the one we have now, and it can be very tough to find candidates, we do have to be quite a bit more flexible, especially when looking at resumes. So, discuss within, amongst your team, management, and just think about ways or things that you can be flexible on, right? If it's not a 10 out of 10 and it's an 8 out of 10 or 7 out of 10, what are the things that you could let go of when you look at a resume, right? Also just opening yourself up to perhaps different types of candidates that you normally would. Obviously, nowadays, there's a lot of great programs out there. Recent grads have some co-op or internship experience. There may be a bit junior, but is that something that you could help bring on board and train where normally you wouldn't, for example? Another example is opening yourself up to candidates across Canada, right? Or in other locations that you normally wouldn't. And just now we are able to work from home. Now there's a lot more technology access and flexibility when it comes to that. So if that's the case with you or with some of your roles, can you open yourself up to candidates outside of the GTA, for example? Implementing referral programs is a big one as well. I mean, I know that a lot of people will just let their team know, hey, we're hiring, but an actual structured program does go a long way. And where there's incentives for your employees to refer other people, that can go a long way. And something that usually has to be repeated to your team quite often, but eventually, it just becomes part of the norm, and they're more motivated to refer people and for different roles. We also always say good people know good people, right? So keep that in mind. Another thing we could try when thinking outside the box would be, partnering up with educational institutions or associations with relevant programs to what you're looking for, right? If you haven't thought about opening yourself up to co-ops or interns and working with those colleges, for example, then you should try thinking about that, right? Like thinking how that may benefit you. Those are wonderful programs that you can get really good people and keep them on afterwards or bring them after, right? Bring them on again another time. So just partnering up with associations. I know we've done that ourselves here and it's really paid off quite well. Seeing how you can work together, and it's usually a win-win. And then the last thing I want to talk about with this is just having a plan in place, with interns that you want to keep. So in addition to co-ops and internship programs, it's just think already ahead of time, right? Don't wait till you find a really great person. Even at that level, the market is very competitive. So we want to make sure that you already have a plan in place for those new grads or interns that you want to keep. So, what does that look like for them? And actually, if you can share that ahead of time with them to say this is, potential, then that also is staying competitive in the market. And moving on.
Yep. So our fourth point for today would be revamping your interviewing method and style. So, company culture is the top factor that retains employees and candidates. And candidates will be looking to, feel out your company culture from the very first interview. A tip that we could, suggest would be to not make the interview too formal because transparency does go a long way. Culture is always at the top of candidates' minds. So, they want to get to know you. They want to get to know the type of environment that you're going to promote if they do, proceed with working with your company. Another thing would be, that we've mentioned before, preparing to have office tours. If possible, even virtual ones to allow candidates to get a feel of the company. This isn't typical for a first stage interview, but it's something that you could consider. And then another thing would be to potentially speed up your interview process, because as we say, time kills all deals. So, tell the candidates what the next steps are going to look like in their interview process, and possibly, if it's going to be a typical interview, you could have a group interview, or you could have, just a different way to kind of speed up that process. You could have back-to-back interviews to help with that time. And then another thing would be to be prepared to make a quick decision and offer the right candidate in that moment. So, having that quick decision-making can definitely speed up the process. And then the last point here would be to think of new ways to recruit. If you haven't already done so, you could reach out to a recruiter and, go that route. Another great idea would be to check out Gahuza, which is on-the-spot interviewing. It's a faster way for finding great candidates, and it's a new way of recruitment all around. And it's definitely a lot faster than the typical recruitment style.
Yeah, wonderful. And I will just add, on a personal experience, I was actually just speaking with someone in the job market this morning, and his first complaint, if you will, was that he was interviewing with a company, but they had too many interviews. It was like 4 interviews that he had to go through. So candidates do it does affect them. I mean, you have to also understand people are working, and it's very competitive. So if a company is saying, well, you're going to go through 4 interviews and that's going to take this much time, versus another company that says, look, I'm going to interview you now. Maybe we'll do 2 people interviewing or group interview at once to cut short the time, and we're going to make a decision right away. That's a lot more appealing to candidates. So it's something to keep in mind for sure. All right. And our last point for today, just staying competitive by continuously adapting. So what does that mean? I know we're always hearing this word flexibility, but it's still out there, so we got to face it. And what I always say to people, especially my clients, is, try to think of flexibility as compromising, not necessarily sacrificing, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to give up everything that you have in place and that you've organized for your company. What it means is looking at different aspects that perhaps you can compromise. So what does that mean? Everyone talks about remote work, so that's obviously an option on the table. We are definitely seeing more and more candidates looking for remote work, or at least a hybrid model where they have the option to work from home. Also, we have, people thinking about hours. So, if you can be flexible on your hours, whether that means that they can start, within the range, in the morning, let's say a time range from, 8 to 10, for example. I know some people are, very busy early schedules with children and whatnot, and then some don't. Some people love to leave the office early and start early and leave early, and some others have like the opposite. So I think if you can just show that you're flexible with those sort of things, if you can, again, it's up to you to choose the things that work for you. But just showing that you're willing to compromise, it does go a long way with candidates, especially when you're trying to be competitive in the market. One other thing that's being talked about a lot right now, and not sure where it's going to go, but it is definitely a hot topic, is the 4-day work week. I've heard all kinds of opinions on it, whether you're for it or, against it, but something just put out there because it is a hot topic right now. And some companies are deciding to try it. Well, it doesn't work for everybody, but something to consider. Another thing is just checking in with mental health and wellness within your company. That's also a big topic at the moment, and I think it's going to continue for a long time. Candidates are looking for companies that are at least aware of this topic and put some time into this. So whether you're offering personal days, every once in a while, and if you do, make sure that that's implemented right away in the offer, because those things are very competitive, whether you call it a personal day or a self-care day, or offering a bit more sick days in your compensation plan. All of that really does matter. It does make a difference. Fun Fridays, for example, right? Just again, adding to the company culture, but also making sure that mental health and wellness is at the forefront of that. So you're killing two birds with one stone. That could be an option, right? It's saying, hey, every Friday we kind of step away from our desks a bit early and we spend some group time together, team building, relaxing right before the weekend. It really does help your job seekers, but also your employees, of course, feel that they're being valued and being taken care of. Other things we're seeing a lot more of these days are, of course, signing bonuses, just being very competitive in terms of compensation and those bonuses that can get someone to choose your job over the next job. Relocation bonuses. So earlier I talked about opening yourself up to candidates that are not necessarily in your geographic area, but perhaps if they can't work from home, consider a relocation bonus for those who would consider moving closer to your office for work. And then, of course, if money isn't everything, but if it's not compensation that we can be competitive with, what about vacation days? What about some other type of compensation rather than salary? So vacation days, I know I've heard a lot of companies really working that angle, and I have clients that they kind of took away the hierarchy structure where, if you start with the company, you get 2 weeks, but then the more you work with the company, you get more vacation. They've actually taken that away. And they said, you know what? Everybody from day one will get the same amount of vacation. So that also can be very, very appealing and can be linked to company culture, could be linked to the mental health aspect. So there's a lot of things that could go into that as well. Another thing that we've worked with would be updating benefit plans. So if you haven't looked at your benefit plans and they might be dated, so just make sure to take a look at that, right? Because you may not be utilizing that to the fullest extent, and you might not be keeping up with the times, talking about all these different types of benefits out there or flex benefits. There's so many options out there. So that's something to consider as well. And then, of course, the last but not least, would just be to make sure you're developing clear and realistic plans for growth, right? I mean, that's something that I think Miranda mentioned can be demonstrated right from the get-go when you're meeting with a job seeker. So from interview one, you can already discuss those plans that you've put into place and give examples of employees who have grown within your organization. So I think that is going to add tons of value, and again, keep you competitive in the job market. Thank you. So I believe it's time for questions. Bless you.
Thank you.
Yes. So we do have a couple of questions here. I'm just going to exit out of the presentation. There we go. Yeah, so let me grab up the. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is ghosting in the recruiting industry. If you could maybe touch a little bit on how that is becoming more, familiar within the industry, within both, even just, just both on the candidate and the client side as well, and how that kind of all plays into it. Yeah.
Yeah, ghosting is definitely a big concern, big frustration for a lot of hiring managers and a lot of recruiters out there. I think there's no secret answer, magic answer I can give, to solve it. But I will say to make sure that, you try to eliminate ghosting as much as possible by your selection process, right? And making sure that the selection process is a bit more personal than just reaching out by email or, just on, let's say, LinkedIn and messages. Make sure that, you're really discussing, your opportunities by phone if you can, or by Zoom, right? Like we really want to have that personal connection right away, even as you're sourcing candidates. It will make they're more inclined to show up to the interviews, right? When they've spoken to you and there's a little bit more investment on them. And then, of course, just lots of reminders, right? Unfortunately, it is a reality, but if we can use the technology we have to, just send those regular reminders to, candidates about their interviews. Also have them fill out questionnaires ahead of time. I've had that, helping out clients with that. Just, we have a questionnaire for you that we'd like you to fill out before the interview. And it could just be a quick one, about things that are suitable to the role. But a lot of, basically, you want to just keep them engaged and, reminding them, engaging with them prior to the main interview can go a long way.
Yeah, so we have another question here. What do you recommend for number of interviews? I think they mean for how many.
Yes, as I mean,
interviews?
hey,
Yeah.
I mean, the less the best, right? I mean, we have had clients really shorten their interviewing process, but there's ways to do that without losing the quality, right? So I would say, honestly, 1 to 2 interviews is my recommendation. And if you can have multiple hiring managers within one interview, and screening the candidate together, that helps, right? So, or back-to-back interviews where you say, okay, we're ready to do back-to-back interviews. If I like this person, I'm going to send them right to the next interview right away, right? So it's that same moment, same day, and let the candidates know that there could be a window, to prepare the window from 1 hour to 2 hours or half an hour to an hour, whatever it will take. But honestly, 1 to 2 interviews, really going over that, you're starting to lose the candidate's interest, but also you're starting to lose time and where other employers are going to approach that candidate. And that's really the risk there.
And this comment that we have here, it's more of it's not really a question. They just wanted to say that they're thanking us for the great presentation, and they just wanted to remind everyone to protect themselves by using strong employment agreements, and that the candidate should sign before they start. If they sign on their first day, the contract is unenforceable. So I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to add just to that comment there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a wonderful point. And first, I'll say you're most welcome for this. And it's really nice to have other, opinions and insights. That's a great point. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always say just have all that, the offers, everything already ahead of time. Have your templates in check, make sure your lawyers are looking over them, and that you are really organized when it comes to the timing of offers. And of course, the things that you're willing to negotiate, not negotiate, et cetera, all of that. So I think that's a great point.
And just one more thing, just before we close out the webinar, if you can just talk about what we can expect in the new year in the industry in terms of the job market. There's a lot of talks about the recession. So if you can maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, so unfortunately I can't tell everyone if, what's happening with the recession and how it's impacting the job market long term. But I will say, of course, that we're still seeing jobs and we're still seeing a demand for high qualified candidates. And that's still a challenge for employers. So even in this market where we thought, last year and all the talks of the recession coming, we thought that was really going to push the market in a different direction where candidates would be more available and also, more willing to, let's say, go in the office and work long hours, et cetera. We're not still seeing that as much as we thought we would. So it's still challenging to find good candidates for whatever reason. They're out there, but again, it's really about being competitive and just using what you can, right, to work together and work with them and attract them as much as possible. But, it's hard to say long term, but I'd still say it's still challenging despite the recession to find good candidates.
Okay, perfect. So I added a couple of emails into the chat and also the link to our website. So if anyone would like to reach out to Eglys or Miranda after the webinar, the emails are over there. And I am also recording the webinar as well. So it will be up on our YouTube channel and I will be sending a follow-up in addition to that as well. So thank you everyone for joining our webinar today. Thank you, Eglys and Miranda, for your presentation. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Bye.